What's up, you guys? Welcome to my channel. I'm Allie Wilkins. If it's your first time here, I'm so happy that you found my page. I really hope that you enjoy this channel, and I invite you to subscribe if you enjoy this video. If you're coming back, thank you for subscribing already. Thank you for engaging with the videos and for commenting and liking. All that stuff really supports me, and I appreciate that you keep coming back. So today is Easter Sunday as I'm filming this. And I wanted to just have a conversation today about some of what I've learned as I have studied the goddess mysteries, as I've studied the matriarchal history, let's call it that. And I want to just start this with the fact, most of you guys watching this, I'm 99% sure most of you don't identify as being religious. So you're not going to be like offended by anything I say, or you're not going to have the desire to like try to prove me wrong. I've had some people do that before in the comments. And so what I want to say here is that my intention with this is literally only to share the things that I've learned that have felt resonant for me and things that I couldn't put words to for my whole life. It's not to try to get you to believe something. It's literally just sharing what I've learned. I don't care what religion you practice. I don't care. I'm not trying to convert you into anything, okay? The whole point of everything that I'm sharing in this video and just in general is like for us to think for ourselves, for us to trust our own divinity over anything else. So I just want to start this video with that. So I'll start with the first thing. There's a few things that I want to say here. The first is like, where is Mary Magdalene today? Nobody ever talks about Mary Magdalene in reference to the resurrection. Nobody talks about Mary Magdalene in reference to Yeshua in general, but especially on the resurrection day, right? She's the one who found him. So if you can imagine if it had been like Peter or Paul or somebody who had found Jesus, like that person probably would have been deemed to be way more important because they're the person that Yeshua showed himself to. Also, it said that Magdalene like never left the tomb. Like she just stayed there the whole time when all the other disciples left. And if you've watched my Mary Magdalene masterclass, which you should, it's phenomenal. Like so many hours of study, like hundreds, if not 1,000, went into the creation of that masterclass. Like over the last few years, not just like in preparation for the one class. But it's really good. I highly recommend you watching it. It's free right now. It's not going to be free for much longer. So go grab that. It's on my website. I'll put it in the link in the comments. Magdalene didn't get any of that reverence, right? She's basically called a whore and a prostitute, which PS, if you've taken the Priestess Returns, which is one of my courses that goes deep into the Magdalene mystery, you'll know that the word whore and prostitute meant a devotee of the goddess. Back then, it didn't mean what it means now. The language has changed, whether that's been purposeful or just happened, which I'm not really sure about that one. The words meant something different. Sinner back then meant someone who worshiped the moon. And so there's so much I want to say. So during that time period, with people who practiced goddess worship, people who worked with the feminine nature, had to hide it. They couldn't share it. And so in the Bible, when it says like you're all sinners, they're talking about people who literally worship the moon, which meant that they operated through the feminine principle. They honored the goddess. You can also see in the story of when they talk about the whore of Babylon, they're talking about Hathor. I believe that's in the story with Moses, when like with the burning bush thing, and then he comes back and his brother Aaron is like leading the people in worship of the sacred cow because that's what they were used to from where they had been in Egypt. They were worshiping Hathor or potentially Isis, one of the two. At some point, the two of them would be considered interchangeable. It's in a certain point in history, but anyways, And of course, whenever I say Isis, if it's on YouTube, I'm talking about goddess Isis. It's just an unfortunate coincidence that that terrorist group like chose the same name. Not cool. Anyways, so the goddess has been like, anyone who practiced that was killed in many cases, actually, or forced to be buried underground, like forced to take that lineage underground. So at the time that the Bible was written, people would have known about all of the different practices of the goddess. It would have been passed down through verbally, through families, through lineages. This would have been like everyday knowledge that people knew about the practices of the goddess. So the whole thing about the whole story of Jesus's resurrection is a practice of the rite of Hieros Gamos. And even in the spiritual community, and especially the twin flame community, people don't know what Hieros Gamos means. And I only know because I did deep study. I initially was the same, and I thought Hieros Gamos was just like, oh, beautiful sacred union. There's another part to it that you should know before you start talking about it or asking for that. So in the practice of Hieros Gamos, what would happen is that the high priestess would anoint a man to be the divine king, and then they would essentially be, like the highest of the high in that civilization. And this is what was happening with Mary Magdalene and Yeshua. She anointed his feet with and the whole body with frankincense. She wept at his feet. She cried and cleansed his feet, right? There's like so many things in the Bible that they say, but it's like, so people of the time would have understood the importance of that, the reference to that. But people now don't understand that because those stories were killed off. If you talked about this sort of thing, you would be dead. It was not safe to talk about that at a certain point in time, 1,500, 2,000 years ago. So anyways, in this sacred rite, the high priestess or the queen would anoint the man to be divine king. That was the only way for him to become king. And then there would be a ritual sacrifice of this person, oftentimes the next day. Do you notice in the Bible, Mary Magdalene anoints his feet and pours frankincense and myrrh and spikenard and all these different oils all over him? Isn't it like literally the day before? So then this king is tortured and sacrificed. And in a lot of these cases, it would be for the bounty of like the land. It would be for the bounty of the community in some case. But so in Jesus's case, we're told he died for our sins. Well, he was actually murdered, but okay, that's like, that's the story that you're telling us, that he was actually murdered. So perhaps it was a sacrifice where he knew what was happening. And I believe that that's actually true, because this person was ascending. His consciousness would have been so high that he would have known what was happening. Anywho, doesn't matter if you believe that or not. Just listen to the story and receive what you want to receive. So the king is then sacrificed for the betterment of the community, for the health of the land, for the bounty of the land itself. Then is resurrected after 3 days of being in the underworld. Jesus is said to be resurrected after 3 days being in the tomb. So basically he ascended, which ascension can happen and you can keep your body. You can stay in the body and still be ascended, or you can leave the body. So the Bible tells us the version that he left his body and that he ascended. But a lot of people believe that that actually isn't what happened. A lot of people say he went to India after that, after his ascension point. Anywho, that's a personal preference of what you believe. And most people haven't even heard that part of the potential story. So Mary Magdalene is the one that he showed himself to after the ascension. So why doesn't she get any credit for that? It's just like, oh yeah, this like common whore just happened to be in the garden outside of the tomb. She calls him the gardener, which in the lingo back then meant something different. And I'm forgetting exactly like the exact correlation, but basically it was like her love, like the person who sowed her field, the person who like tended to her heart. So a lot of people believe that Mary Magdalene and Yeshua were first of all, they were equals. Like if you're watching my channel, that's just how I'm going to speak. So get used to it. They were equals, and they were both operating in Christ consciousness. And then Mary Magdalene afterwards went and spread the teaching elsewhere. Anywho, so I'm like getting ahead of myself. So why isn't she given any credit for that? So like this year, today is Easter. I'm not really doing anything. My family is in another state. Otherwise I probably would go like eat dinner with them or something, but I just don't choose to like honor the partial story, which is why I'm on here sharing the part that I think is missing, which number one is that this was something this was a normal ritual practice that happened for thousands of years. And it doesn't take that much study to find all these different examples of it. So why would that have been left out? Right? In the Bible, why is Mary Magdalene's name mentioned a few times, but it's like so casual? Like, oh yeah, this literally they're like this whore from off the street came in and like cried on his feet and came in and, you know, anointed him with frankincense. Like that means that she was a queen. Nobody would have been able to do that unless they were considered a high priestess, which Mary Magdalene and Mother Mary were both considered high priestesses. And so this lineage was still living during the time of Jesus, although it was like kind of like the government of the time tolerated them because they sort of had to, but it was like the last of the kind. I believe that the last goddess temple was torn down in 150 BC. So that would be like 150 years, the time Jesus was born, like 120-ish years since you were able to go to a goddess temple. So there's just like so much to the story that we haven't heard, right? And at minimum, why is it not mentioned that, you know, in these goddess mysteries, or in the Hieros Gamos practice, we haven't talked about really the queen and the priestess and like what her role was in this. So she would be in the phase of lamenting, like in deep grief, when her love, the king, is in the underworld when he's gone. You can see this in so many different stories of the goddess. You see this also in the story of Isis and Osiris. And you see it with Mary Magdalene and Mother Mary at the feet of the cross, weeping and lamenting, and Mary Magdalene apparently not leaving the tomb ever, right? So I have chills. There's just like so much to the story. There's also a lot of, I'm not as educated about this, so I'm not going to like speak details, but also a lot of the holidays and the days that are chosen for holidays are actually based on ancient pagan rituals. And the church was also like they did so much that was so sketchy for the goddess lineage, let alone like killing the whole lineage off and forcing people to become Christian or to become Catholic and to abide by their rules, like, or else. It was very different 2000 years ago. It was very different 1500 years ago. You know, what's interesting to think about, it wasn't that long ago that the church really lost a lot of its power. I mean, okay, at the start of America, right? One of the first things that the founding fathers said is that there's going to be a separation between church and state. One of the reasons that they said that is because they had just been through the Crusades. They had just been through this time period when Catholics were like killing so many people. You can go look at the research and see the history of it. And it's like, why is this stuff not talked about? Like, it's very perplexing to me. And my thought is that all of this is purely because of fear and because of deep mind control. And when you control people into believing that they're sinners, that they are inherently shameful, that starts to chip away at someone's power. And once you've done that for 1,000 years, it's pretty difficult for that person to regain their full power back, right? So 1776, whenever the Constitution was formed, that's when the church and state separated in the US. And if you think about it, 50 years ago, probably, I mean, I'm not sure about this, but like most people were going to church on the weekend if they were Christian. Most people were spending a lot of time reading the Bible and doing those sorts of things, and very pious. And we still see this in some places today. And now, really probably since like the 70s and 80s, when there's been this revival of this free spirit and like you're being able to choose, and this revival of spiritualism and a remembrance moving through the whole world, especially the Western world, it's changed a lot of things, right? A lot of people don't identify as being religious anymore. Church doesn't have as much power over them. But the interesting thing is that these stories, we all know them. I didn't grow up going to church every weekend. I told my parents when I was little, I won't be returning. I hate it here. I'm not coming back. I remember, you've probably heard me say this in another video, but it's like good, so I'm gonna keep saying it. I remember telling my mom they're hiding something. I remember feeling like they were lying. The pastors in my church were like good people. They weren't like horrible, like tyrants, right? They were good people, but I was like, they're lying. They're not telling the full truth. Something's missing here. And this is me at like 7, just inherently knowing something's off. I'm like, I'm not even gonna be a part of this in any capacity. And I grew up in more spiritualism. So even with that said, we all know the stories. We all know the story of Adam and Eve. That's another video, because that's a whole huge piece of distortion in the entire story. And probably almost every person in the world is aware of that story. And different religions have sort of different versions of that story too. If you have any questions that you'd like me to do a follow-up video on, or just that I can answer in the comments, please put them in the comments. I really just wanted to bring attention today to Mary Magdalene. Like, let's give her some credit, please. Because she's the one who found Yeshua, and she is his equal counterpart. And he was only able to do what he did through her power. One of my favorite things that I've learned in my study of all of this is that there could be no king without the goddess. The goddess, aka the high priestess, who is the human incarnation of the goddess, the representative of the goddess on earth. She was the only one who could grant that sort of power to make someone a king. I think that that's so beautiful, because we've learned the exact opposite. In the last few thousand years, we've seen, kings we're not going to go into that, but we've learned the opposite, that women don't have that sort of power. And so much of that, I would say all of that, is from single-handedly done from the church. There has been so much damage that the church has created, and people, I'm not trying to convince anybody of anything here. What I'm trying to do is open people's eyes to literally look at the history. How can you be like sharing messages about like loving your neighbor and doing all this stuff, and then you're like literally like burning down whole villages of Cathars who are honoring like the goddess, who are protecting the feminine? Like, how can those two things be hand in hand? It makes no sense. It's just like, oh yeah, that was. And with the Cathars, like, side note, do you know something that happened? So not with the Cathars, with some of the Knights of Templar, which their story has also been very distorted. These are all different videos and all different things that I teach on, and I'm going to be teaching on more. The Catholic Church burnt at the stake, I think it was like 44 Knights of Templar or something like that. And I want to say this happened on April 13th, but I might be wrong about that, so don't quote me. But I think that that's when it happened. They burnt like 40 knights at the stake. And then later, like 5 years later or something, they're like, whoops, they actually weren't heretics. Sorry. Like, if a leader did that today, there'd be no way that they could just get away with that, right? So we have to be willing to look at these facts, not to condemn others or to like hate the church so much, because the church is very different today, at least in the people who practice it, maybe not at the top, because the church is a business. Let's be very clear and honest about that. It's a power-hungry business, and that has had world power for thousands of years now. So it's not to blame or to be like anything. The purpose is so that we can see all of the beliefs that are so deeply rooted through thousands of years of our generations, deeply rooted through extreme amounts of fear and coercion, and then eventually just like submitting, and eventually just like stifling and succumbing. That's the word I was looking for. Like just succumbing to it. Like, okay, well, yeah, I guess I don't have any power, and yeah, I guess I am a sinner. Like, and then that travels through the bloodline, and then we become less powerful. So when we can look at like, what is the truth of what actually happened? What is the seed of so much of the distortion that still lives in my body? And you see like so much of it is connected to the church. It's like, interesting. it gives us a reference point to be able to be like, let me pull this plug right on out. I'm not going to be operating with that shit anymore. And just as like a lot of women, this is something that's not talked about very often at all. A lot of women have issues with our sexuality, with owning our sexuality, with feeling free in it, even though it's literally proven that women are actually a lot more sexual than men. And, you know, I don't think that that necessarily matters so much, but we have this deep suppression of our sexuality that is 100% from the church. And of course, you might have like traumatic things that have happened in your life, or, you know, your own just issues, or your own family issues, but a lot of that stems from the church. Same with men. It's like the separation. You guys, I could go on forever. I'll just say this because I can't leave you with that. Like the separation of the woman from the church labeled Mother Mary as a pure, holy virgin. Virgin also meant a woman sovereign to herself. It didn't mean someone who hadn't had sex. So when the Bible says that, we think that it means she never had sex. That's not true. There's also something called light conception, that's a whole nother video. They labeled Mother Mary as this holy, pure, perfect mother being, right? When in fact, she was a high priestess and a full feminine force. Then they labeled Mary Magdalene as the whore, as the prostitute. So they created this separation between like the light goddess and the dark goddess, and they demonized the dark goddess. So then internally, what we've all been literally bred and trained and programmed to do is to resist the dark goddess. And men have been trained to do the same thing, but the dark goddess is like, we need all aspects of the feminine. So then they would marry someone who showcased like wifey material, right? Like she's pure, she's holy, she's a virgin, she's just like holy. And then the dark goddess is what they actually craved, because that's the goddess in her power, although it's been distorted so much that a lot of that is being used in manipulation now. So anyways, we have a lot of work to do, and most of it is at the hands of the church. So I think that's a great place to stop. Thank you guys for watching. If you have a comment, make sure it's respectful. I'm not saying this because I want to change your mind. I'm saying this literally just to share, like I said, what has been helpful for me. If you want more of this, go watch the Priestess Returns playlist here. Also, there's a playlist called like feminine something. You can go look. I have more videos there. On my website, I have multiple masterclasses that are free. Some of them are going to be paid soon, so you can download those. The Mary Magdalene class is excellent. That one's going to be a paid product soon because it's so good. The Womb of Creation is a really great one, especially to watch when we're going into the winter months. That's when I held it. But I would really recommend first to watch The Return to Goddess. It's extremely eye-opening. And then if you want more, or if you just want to go fully in, go get the Priestess Returns. This is a 4-module course, really 5 modules. There's full videos that are teaching about some of the 4 faces of Mary Magdalene. But also there's just like, I really outdid myself with this one, you guys. Like there's so much information about the fall of the priestesses and about the shift from matriarchy to patriarchy. Like there's just a lot in there, and it's something that you can keep coming back to over and over again. Anything that I sell, it's designed to be that way, so that you can keep getting use out of it after like long periods of time. You can still get more gems from it. So anyways, I'll put the links to all that stuff in the comments below. Please like this video if you enjoyed it so that more people can find it. Please leave a comment. That I really enjoy reading your comments, and also it helps other people to find the video. And that's really my intention, to share as much free information as I can. And then those of you who feel called to work with me in a deeper way, you can purchase my courses, you can download masterclasses, and you can work with me one-on-one. I also do, I do work with soul mission with people, with helping you understand your soul blueprint, what you're really here for, and really helping you to get in alignment in your life with that, creating your whole life around your soul blueprint. This is something that I've helped dozens and dozens and dozens of people with. And I also do work with the ancient feminine work. So private initiations, working with the mystery, working with the goddess lineage. So those are also really wonderful. And then I also do work as an oracle. So you can hire me as an oracle for a year. That's like, we go in really deep. That's the closest access you can get to me. Or you can also book an Akashic record reading. I have a wait list for single readings, but you can book a package of 3 sessions if you want to get a session in now, and you can use those over a year. And that we're basically focusing on what is happening in your blueprint. What do your guides want you to know? What is important for you to understand about past lives right now? What is important for you to see in yourself? Like, the messages that come in are designed to help you right in this moment, in the chapter that you're in. And these sessions are phenomenal. So you can go browse my website for all that stuff, alliewilkins.com. If you have any questions, email me, alliewilkinsabundance@gmail.com, or just you can comment them below or message me on Instagram at allie.wilkins or at Ancient Feminine. Those are my 2 pages. Okay, that's it. I hope you guys have a beautiful day, and thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate you being here and supporting my page and supporting me.